Just stand near the wall. You're not in the official family shots." That's what my sister said to me on her wedding day, while adjusting her dress and smiling for photographers. I wasn't late. I wasn't inappropriately dressed. I wasn't even trying to be seen. I was just standing there, the way I always did in this family, a little outside the frame. The seat they assigned me was gone. I double-checked the card. Table 6, seat 3. My name printed in gold. But when I got there, a girl I didn't recognize, blonde, glittery chewing gum, was already sitting there. "Oh," she said, "someone told me this was open." Turns out she was the +1 of the cousin of the groom's fiancé. Not even family. I asked a server quietly if there were any extra seats. He shrugged. I stood near the exit with my clutch in both hands, trying not to be in the way. That's when I heard my father's voice, just behind me. "Honestly, I don't even know why Maya's here. She's always so heavy. She ruins things. She doesn't fit." Then he added, to someone else. I couldn't tell who. "I told Sarah not to invite her. She doesn't deserve to be part of this day." I froze. Not because I hadn't heard things like that before, but because this time he said it out loud. At a wedding. Around people. As if it were fact. As if it were okay. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for clarification. I didn't try to earn my place back. I just turned and walked toward the gift table. My envelope was easy to find, thick, white, with a small handwritten card and a folded check inside. $1,000. That money had taken me 6 months to save. But suddenly I knew it wouldn't be missed. I picked it up, slipped it into my clutch, and walked back down the aisle I hadn't been allowed to walk during the ceremony. People noticed. Heads turned. And I didn't stop. As I reached the front entrance, I looked over my shoulder just once and said, "Don't worry, I won't ruin anything else." And then I disappeared. But what happened next, in the days and weeks that followed, would unravel the image they worked so hard to protect. Because they forgot something important. They raised the quiet one. And quiet doesn't mean weak. I used to think there was something wrong with me. Because when your own family acts like your presence is an inconvenience, you start to believe it. That you're too quiet, too awkward, too smart or not smart enough, too emotional, too much, or in my case, just too invisible to matter. Growing up, my sister Sarah was the golden child. She sparkled. She danced. She lit up every room. At least, that's what everyone said. She was the one with the framed awards, the solo parts in the school musicals, the college acceptance letters, everyone toasted. I wasn't jealous. I was just tired. Tired of being her shadow. Tired of my dad forgetting my birthday twice. Tired of my mom telling me to stop overthinking when I cried quietly in my room after being left out. I got good grades. Never broke rules. Helped around the house without being asked. Still, I was the one they forgot in introductions. Oh, and that's Maya, our other daughter. I put myself through community college while Sarah got a fully funded degree at a private university. She always had so much potential. I apparently was just practical. I started working right after graduation. Admin jobs, graphic work, temp gigs. Quiet money, saved carefully. Sarah got engaged to a man whose family threw parties that looked like magazine spreads. They planned the wedding in under 6 months. Everyone was involved. Except me. I wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid. Wasn't invited to dress fittings. Didn't get a "will you stand beside me" card in the mail. Just a text. "Hey, can you RSVP online? Hope you're free that weekend." That was my little sister. I told myself I was imagining it. That they were busy. That maybe they didn't realize. But then the wall comment happened. Then the seat. Then my own father, saying I didn't deserve to be there. And in that moment, something in me clicked. I realized I had spent years trying to earn space in a room that had no seat meant for me in the first place. So I took back the one thing that was mine, my choice. My voice. My envelope. My exit. And what they didn't know was, I wasn't just walking away. I had something they didn't expect. Leverage. And I was about to use it. They didn't notice at first. I left before the first dance, before the cake, before the speeches. Maybe they thought I was being dramatic. Maybe they assumed I'd slipped out quietly, sulking. They were half right, but they didn't realize I hadn't just walked out of the venue. I'd walked out of their story. The first message came 2 days later. From Sarah. Hey, saw you left early. Everything okay? I didn't respond. She didn't follow up. Next was my mother. I hope you didn't take anything your father said too seriously. You know how he gets when he's had a drink. He'd said it before the wine. I remembered clearly. His voice wasn't slurred. His mind wasn't foggy. Just his heart. Still, I didn't reply. The voicemail started by the end of the week. One from my aunt. We missed you at brunch. Are you still upset about the seat mix-up? Another from my dad, oddly short. You could have said something before storming off. That was embarrassing for your sister. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't ask how I felt. They just wondered why the photos didn't look right with me gone. Why there was no envelope in the gift box with my name on it. Then came the post-wedding awkwardness. Apparently, the photographer had already uploaded previews to a private gallery. Sarah shared them in the family WhatsApp group. I wasn't in a single shot. Not at the ceremony. Not in the family photos. Not even standing near the wall. My cousin texted me privately. Hey, did they ask you not to be in the pictures? I thought that was weird. I didn't confirm. Didn't deny. Just replied. I wasn't really part of the plan. He didn't respond. But 3 minutes later, Sarah removed me from the WhatsApp group. That should have hurt. But it didn't, because for the first time in years, the silence was mine. Not something done to me. Something I chose. A week later, my boss called me into her office. She'd been at the wedding. Not as a guest, but as a consultant. She handled venue contracts and event licensing on the side. It was her side business. She kept it low-key. I hadn't even known she'd be there. She closed the door and looked at me carefully. You okay? I nodded. You know I saw how they treated you, right? I looked up. That part one hadn't expected. They didn't even acknowledge you. It was like watching someone get written out of their own family. I swallowed. She reached into her drawer, pulled out a folder. I know something you don't. They're not just cruel. They're careless. And if you wanted to, you could do something with that. I opened the folder, and what I saw inside changed everything. Inside the folder were 2 documents, both signed, both legal, and both directly connected to the wedding. The first was a venue rental agreement, listing Sarah and her husband as co-signers, but also listing my employer, my boss, as the private property owner of the land the reception was held on. She didn't just coordinate the event. She owned the estate. And the second document, a private service agreement, confirming that all vendors, including the caterer, DJ, photographer, even parking attendants, had been paid under one umbrella invoice. Guess who was listed as the event sponsor on that invoice? Me. Or more specifically, the corporate gifting fund I manage at work, a fund I was given permission to dip into for special occasions, under the condition that it served brand visibility and public goodwill. My boss had arranged it as a favor. She offered to help cover the cost of the venue and essentials under my name, as long as I didn't use personal funds, and the family agreed to the promotional terms. They signed, and in doing so, they unknowingly made me the primary underwriter of the wedding. I paid for the venue, the DJ, the food, the valet, even the gift bags. That envelope I took off the table? It was the least valuable thing I pulled from that night. My boss smiled as I sat in silence, processing it. You're allowed to do nothing. Just walk away. Or, if you want to hold them accountable, I'll back you. Legally? I asked. Legally? Socially? Personally? Quietly? She wasn't pushing me. She was giving me back the pen. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just want closure. I wanted them to understand. To finally feel what it's like to be erased. To be excluded. To be an afterthought. That night, I reviewed every contract. The signed waiver stating that event sponsorship must be acknowledged in all published content. The invoice showing the venue was billed under my work account, with my signature as the initiator. The catering contract noting my dietary requests, the ones that were never served at the wedding. All of it lined up. They hadn't just humiliated me. They'd violated a business agreement. And for the first time in years, I held something they couldn't dismiss, belittle, or gaslight away. Proof. The next morning, I made a list. Pull company funds back? Notify vendors about the breach? Email Sarah and her husband about the terms they ignored? But none of it was impulsive. There were no threats, no yelling, no social media posts. Just a clean, polite email with all relevant documents attached, and one final line. Consider this notice that the silence you gave me has now been returned, with interest. They didn't respond right away. My email sat there, unopened by Sarah for 3 days, even though I could see the read receipt trigger from her husband's device. I wasn't expecting thanks. I was expecting shock. And that's exactly what I got. On the 4th day, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. Straight to voicemail. Maya, this is Dad. What is this crap about the venue? Your sister's telling me you're making demands like some lawyer. I don't know what stunt you're trying to pull, but this isn't funny. You're embarrassing yourself. Enough is enough. I smiled, because they still didn't get it. They thought this was personal. They didn't realize they'd breached a contract. The DJ already contacted me to ask why the sponsor was pulling their digital rights permission. The photographer emailed to say she couldn't legally post any of the wedding photos publicly without permission from the primary event underwriter. That's me. The social media album Sarah had spent hours curating, gone. Taken down. Because my name wasn't in it, but my money paid for it. I didn't reply to Dad. Instead, I forwarded a second notice, this time through my boss's lawyer. A formal warning about breach of agreement and public misrepresentation of corporate sponsorship. The tone was professional, unemotional. It didn't need to sound angry to land like a hammer. The silence that followed told me everything. 2 days later, I got an email from Sarah. No subject line. Just, why are you doing this? No apology. No ownership. No acknowledgement of the photos, the seat, the words Dad said. Just confusion, because for the first time in her life, I was the one holding something she wanted. I sat on it, didn't respond. I went for a walk, got a coffee, watched a little girl hug her mom outside a bookstore, and something clicked. They weren't sorry. They were scared. Scared that the person they thought was disposable wasn't. Scared that the version of me they kept at arm's length was suddenly at the center of something they needed. So I replied, not with anger, but with precision. You asked why I'm doing this. I'm not. You did. You signed the papers. You accepted the funding. You excluded me. I'm simply enforcing the boundaries you wrote around me. You said I didn't deserve to be part of your story, and now I've accepted that. I ended it with a single line. You can keep the day, just not the image. Within a week, the wedding posts were gone. The vendor tags? Removed. The photography rights? Revoked. And Sarah? She went quiet, because for the first time in our lives, she couldn't edit me out without losing everything around me. The fallout wasn't explosive. It was quiet. Emails that went unanswered. Photos that never got reposted. Vendors who pulled out of the post-wedding magazine feature Sarah had submitted to, because permissions weren't finalized. I didn't have to lift another finger. They did it to themselves. A week after my last email, my mom called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice brittle, like she was choosing every word through gritted teeth. Maya, I don't know what this is really about, but you've made your point. It's over now. Can we please just move on and act like a family again? Act. That was the word that stuck with me, because that's all we'd ever done. Act like we were close. Act like I was part of something. Act like I was never hurting. She didn't say sorry. Didn't say you were right. Just wanted the consequences to stop without acknowledging the cause. That's not an apology. That's a reset button. And I wasn't pressing it. From what I heard through my cousin, the only one who quietly checked in to say, I'm proud of you. Sarah had been in full damage control mode. She keeps saying Maya overreacted, he said, but she knows. Everyone knows. She humiliated you, and now she's trying to spin it. Apparently, one of the vendors had already left a review on a closed industry forum. Bride's family disrespected event sponsor. Contracts ignored. Poor communication. Would not work with again. They thought I was disposable. But in the end, I was the one person they couldn't erase without leaving a hole in the foundation. They'd planned a post-wedding brunch with local media friends. Small influencer Sarah had been courting for months, hoping for a lifestyle write-up, a mini feature, hashtags, brand mentions. But when the press found out the vendor agreements were under dispute, they backed out. No story, no photos, no buzz, just a quietly awkward brunch, a lot of uneaten food, and a family sitting in silence wondering how the girl they told to stand against the wall managed to pull the power cord on their fantasy. I didn't tell anyone what happened, didn't make a social post, didn't gloat, didn't even mention it to friends unless they asked, because this wasn't revenge. This was restoration of my worth, of my boundaries, of the truth that I had value, whether or not they ever saw it. They thought silence was weakness, but silence in the right hands is devastating. I didn't plan on changing my life after the wedding, but when you finally stop shrinking, it's hard to go back. The silence I walked into became space, and space became something I'd never had before. Freedom. No more tiptoeing around phone calls. No more awkward dinners, pretending we were something we weren't. No more invisible wounds from people who smiled with their mouths and cut with their silence. I invested the wedding gift money. Not just the envelope I took back, the full amount that had been allocated through my employer's fund, now redirected with permission. I started a project I'd shelved for years, a community design program for young women from underrepresented backgrounds. Girls like me, the ones people overlook until they don't. We met weekly, taught each other skills, built portfolios, shared stories, created things that mattered. The program took off faster than I expected. By spring, we had sponsorship inquiries. By summer, I had stepped out of my old job and into a leadership role I never thought I'd earn on my own terms. But I did, because I wasn't waiting to be included anymore. I was building the table. My apartment changed too. I started replacing things, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Lamps, blankets, wall art. I filled the space with softness, with color, with laughter from new friends who didn't know me as Sarah's sister, just Maya. For the first time, I had people over who saw me, not for who I was missing from my life, but for who I was becoming in it. One afternoon, months after the wedding, I passed by a coffee shop where Sarah's Instagram had once tagged as sister date. A post I was never in. Just 2 cappuccinos and a caption that read, "She gets me." That moment used to sting. Now, I walked past without looking inside, because I didn't need their story anymore. I had my own. People think rising means winning, but for me, it meant not needing the scoreboard at all. It meant waking up and not checking if I was being talked about. Not wondering if I'd be invited. Not asking if I was enough. I am. And the version of me that once stood by the wall, eyes down, waiting for someone to say, "Come join us." She doesn't live here anymore. She's been replaced by a woman who brings her own chair or walks away if none were built for her. I still have the dress I wore to the wedding. It hangs in the back of my closet, clean, unwrinkled, untouched since that day. Not because I can't let go, because I remember everything it taught me. How it felt to stand in a room where no one saved me a seat. How it felt to hear my own father say I didn't deserve to be there. How it felt to leave without raising my voice, without making a scene, without asking anyone to follow. That dress isn't a scar. It's a marker, a quiet line between the version of me who waited to be invited and the woman who finally left the building. Sometimes people ask if I ever reconnected with my family. No, not really. They never apologized, never said we were wrong, never asked what that day felt like for me. They didn't want understanding. They wanted restoration without reflection. And I wasn't going to offer it, because forgiveness isn't about handing back access. It's about choosing yourself in full, even if that means walking forward alone. I've created more life in the months since than I ever did in the years I spent shrinking. I started speaking at small conferences, published a piece about emotional invisibility that went unexpectedly viral, helped one of my design students land a full scholarship. Her thank you card is taped to my fridge. She wrote, "Thank you for not asking me to be small." And when I read that, I knew I'd broken the cycle, because they tried to convince me that standing by the wall was my place. but I was never meant to be in the background. I was just raised by people who feared what would happen if I stepped into the light. The last time I heard from Sarah was a text. 6 words. You made your point. We're done. She meant it as punishment. I read it as freedom, because what they never realized is I wasn't trying to prove a point. I was proving to myself that I didn't need theirs. Their seat, their spotlight, their approval. I didn't need a family who only remembered I existed when they needed something photo-worthy. I needed peace. And now, I have it. Sometimes I still think about the wedding. The music, the lights, the laughter. I wonder if they noticed that, even with all the guests, all the dancing, all the celebration, something felt missing. Not because I was loud, not because I was dramatic, but because when the quiet one leaves and takes her presence, her effort, her energy, her kindness, it echoes louder than any toast. And now, I don't need to be in the picture to know I made the frame possible. I made it all possible. They just looked away too long to notice.